How's the
Oh
horse looking?
my
Vitals are
God.
stable. I'll check for fractures.
Thanks. I'll secure the scene.
The rain fell hard on the morning that nobody expected everything to change. Marcus Webb stood outside the stable at Westridge Ranch, watching the water pour down from the grey sky. His jacket was already wet. His boots were covered in mud. But he was not thinking about the weather. He was thinking about the horse in the back pen. He was thinking about the horse that everyone called Jinxed. The ranch was quiet that morning. Most of the workers were inside the main lodge, eating breakfast, talking about the day ahead. Nobody came to this part of the barn anymore. Nobody wanted to. Not since the horse had been moved here 3 years ago. Not since Dale Hutchins had told everyone that this horse was dangerous and crazy and broken beyond repair. That was when Marcus saw her. The dark bay mare stood alone in the mud. Her coat was dull and patchy. Her ribs showed through her skin like a skeleton underneath. Her mane was tangled and rough, stuck to her neck with dirt and rainwater. She did not move when Marcus looked at her. She just stood there, her head hanging low, her eyes looking at nothing at all. Her name was Sunrise, but nobody called her that anymore. Marcus had worked at this ranch for 32 years. He had seen many horses come and go. He had trained young horses. He had fixed broken horses. He had worked with horses that were wild and crazy and impossible to handle. But he had never seen a horse like this one. He had never seen a horse that looked so empty inside. The stable manager's name was Dale Hutchins. Dale had been at the ranch for 23 years. He was the one who took care of buying and selling horses. He was the one who made the decisions about which horses stayed and which horses left. And Dale had made it very clear that Sunrise was a horse that nobody wanted, a horse that was not worth keeping, a horse that should have been gone a long time ago. 3 years ago, Sunrise had come to Westridge Ranch from an estate sale. That was what the papers said. An old woman had died, and her horses had to be sold. Sunrise was supposed to be a good horse. She had papers that said she was purebred. Her bloodline was valuable. She should have been worth a lot of money. But within 3 months, Dale had started telling people that something was wrong with her. He said she was dangerous. He said she reared when you tried to ride her. He said she kicked without warning. He said she spooked at shadows and bolted through fences. He said she was unstable and crazy. Nobody disagreed with Dale. Everyone at the ranch believed what he said. Because Dale knew horses. Dale had been working with horses for a long time. And if Dale said a horse was dangerous, then that horse must be dangerous. Within 6 months, nobody wanted to ride Sunrise. Nobody wanted to breed her. Nobody even wanted to go near her pen. When it was time to clean her stall, people took turns doing it quickly and quietly, without looking at her too much. They did not want to catch her eye. They did not want to spend time near her. By the end of the first year, Sunrise had become the ranch's scary story. The horse that made new workers nervous, the horse that everyone warned you about, the horse that was proof that some animals were just broken from the start, and nothing could fix them. But that was the problem. That was the thing that had been bothering Marcus for a very long time now. Marcus had a feeling in his stomach that something was not right. He could not explain it in words. It was just a feeling. A little voice in his head that said something about this horse's story did not make sense. That something did not add up. He had tried to talk to people about it. He had suggested to Dale that maybe Sunrise just needed time. Maybe she needed patience. Maybe she needed someone to work with her slowly and carefully, the way you work with any horse that has had a hard time. But Dale had just laughed at him. That same harsh, cold laugh that Dale always made when someone said something stupid. "That horse is poison," Dale had said. "Waste your time on her if you want, but she will never be any good." The other ranch hands did not want to talk about it. When Marcus brought it up, they looked away. They changed the subject. They acted like Marcus was the crazy one for asking questions. So Marcus had stopped asking. He had stopped thinking about it. He had pushed down that little voice in his head that kept saying something was wrong, but the voice never really went away. That Tuesday morning, Marcus found a note in his mailbox. It was written on a piece of paper that had been torn from a feed inventory list. The handwriting was his own handwriting. No, wait, not his handwriting, Dale's handwriting. The note said, Anyone who can fix the jinxed horse keeps her. $150 cash, no questions asked. Marcus read it 3 times. Then he read it 3 times again. This made no sense. Dale hated this horse. Dale had said for 3 years that this horse should be gone. Dale had suggested 6 months ago that the horse should be killed because she was suffering from some kind of brain problem. Dale had laughed about sending her to the glue factory. So why would Dale offer money for someone to fix her? That did not make sense at all. Unless Dale was testing something. Unless Dale already knew what would happen if someone spent time with Sunrise. Unless Dale wanted to see what would happen. Marcus looked out the window at the horse standing in the rain. She still had not moved. She was just standing there in the mud, wet and thin and alone. Her head was down. Her eyes were closed. She looked like she had already given up. She looked like she had decided that nothing mattered anymore. That was when something shifted in Marcus's chest. A hard, sharp feeling that made him want to do something. Want to say something, want to act. He was 58 years old. He had spent his whole life at this ranch. He had followed orders. He had kept quiet about things that troubled him. He had accepted what other people told him to believe. He had not asked too many questions. He had not made too many waves. But something about this note, something about this horse, something about this moment made him understand that he could not stay quiet anymore. He pulled his jacket tighter. The rain was cold on his face. The mud was thick under his boots. The other workers were still inside the lodge, maybe 100 yards away. The cameras in this part of the barn had been broken for a long time. The last person would not come to this section until after 10 o'clock. Marcus walked to the gate. He unlatched it. He stepped inside, and in 45 seconds, everything about what he believed to be true about this ranch would shatter into 1,000 pieces. Sunrise's ear flicked, not toward him, but away. Like she was listening to something inside her own head. Like she was remembering something that Marcus did not know about, something that nobody at this ranch wanted him to know about. Marcus took one more step forward. That was when he saw it. The
Marcus
marks.
stepped closer to Sunrise, and that was when he saw them clearly. The marks on her body. Not just 1 or 2 small marks, but many marks. Long lines across her ribs. Deep welts on her back legs. Scars and shapes that did not make sense unless something had been done to her again and again. His hand started to shake. Marcus had worked with horses for 32 years. He knew what different kinds of injuries looked like. He knew the difference between an accident mark and an intentional mark. He knew the difference between a scar that came from a fall and a scar that came from being hit. These marks were not accidents. These marks were a pattern. The welts on her sides were long and parallel, like something thin had been dragged across her skin over and over. The scars on her back legs were thick and dark, like she had been struck with something hard many times in the same spot. On her shoulder, there was a circular mark that was deeper and darker than the others, like something had been pressed into her skin repeatedly until the mark became permanent. Marcus moved his eyes slowly across her body. Her coat was not just thin from poor feeding. Her coat was patchy because hair was missing in specific places, where the scars were thickest, where the marks were deepest. Her skin had been damaged so badly that the hair would not grow back. He felt something rise in his chest. Not anger exactly. Something bigger than anger. Something that made it hard to breathe. Sunrise's, I was watching him now. The eye that he could see clearly. It was a dark brown eye, and it was cloudy at the edges, like clouds forming over a sunset. Marcus had read once that horses got cataracts when they lived in darkness, when they did not see sunlight, when they lived in constant fear and stress. This horse had cataracts. That meant she had been living in darkness for a long time. Not just the darkness of a barn, but the darkness of terror. Marcus reached out his hand slowly, not to touch her, just to let her smell him, to let her know he was there. His hand was shaking so badly that he had to grip his own wrist to steady it. When he brought his hand closer, Sunrise's entire body became stiff. Every muscle in her body went tight and hard. Her breathing became very shallow. He could barely see her sides move. Her eye got wider. She was looking at his hand like his hand was a dangerous thing. Marcus pulled his hand back slowly. He was not going to touch her. Not yet. Not until he understood what had been done to her. He looked at her mouth. Her teeth. and what he saw made his stomach twist into a knot. Her front teeth were broken. The edges were jagged and sharp. The teeth were not naturally broken like from a fall. They were worn down and damaged like she had been grinding them against something hard, something metal, something that had been in her mouth again and again. Her gums were swollen. They were dark red and purple. They looked infected, like they had been damaged over a long time and had never been allowed to heal properly. Marcus had seen horses that were worked too hard, horses that were ridden with bits that were too severe, bits that cut into their mouths and made them bleed. But those horses were usually worked in competitions or training. This horse was standing in a back pen that nobody ever came to. This horse was not being ridden at all. So why would her mouth be damaged like this? What was happening to her? Marcus heard a sound coming from somewhere deeper in the barn. A scraping sound, metal on concrete, something being dragged. Then he heard voices, low voices. He could not hear the words, but he recognized one of the voices. It was Dale Hutchins. Sunrise's entire body froze. Not in the way a startled horse freezes, but the way an animal freezes when it knows that pain is coming, when it knows that danger is very close. Her eye fixed on the direction of the sound. Her legs trembled slightly. Her breathing became even more shallow, and Marcus understood something in that moment. Sunrise was not crazy. Sunrise was not dangerous. Sunrise was terrified, and she was terrified of a specific person, a specific voice, a specific sound. She was terrified of Dale Hutchins. The scraping sound came closer. The voices got louder. Dale was talking to someone else, someone Marcus did not recognize. The words were still too quiet to hear clearly, but Marcus could hear enough. She is worth more as she responds to correction, a strange voice said. The voice of someone who was not from the ranch. The voice of someone who did not belong here. Marcus felt his heart start to beat very fast. What did that mean? What kind of correction? What was worth more? He looked at Sunrise again. She was still frozen, still terrified, still waiting for whatever came next. The footsteps came closer. They were almost at the corner of the barn. In about 10 seconds, whoever was walking would be able to see into Sunrise's pen. In about 10 seconds, Dale would know that Marcus was here. That Marcus had seen the marks. That Marcus was asking questions. Marcus had to make a choice. He could leave the pen right now. He could walk out casually. He could pretend he had just come to check on the horse. He could go back to his normal work. He could keep his mouth shut like he always did. He could accept what Dale said the way everyone else did. He could push down that little voice in his head that was screaming that something very bad was happening here. Or he could stay. He could bear witness to whatever came next. He could see the truth. He could let that truth matter. The footsteps were very close now. Marcus did not leave the pen. He stood there in the rain, in the mud, next to a horse that had been taught to fear every human sound. A horse that had been marked and broken and abandoned. A horse that everyone called Jinxed because it was easier to blame the horse than to ask questions about what was being done to her. The footsteps reached the corner. Dale Hutchins appeared first. His face was red from the cold. His jaw was tight. Behind him came a man that Marcus had never seen before. A younger man, maybe 45 years old, wearing clothes that cost more money than Marcus made in 3 months. The man was holding something in his right hand. It was a whip, a braided leather whip, the kind used for punishment, the kind that left the exact marks that Marcus had just seen on Sunrise's body. The marks suddenly made terrible sense. They were not from an accident. They were from this man, from Dale, from a deliberate choice to hurt this animal over and over. Dale's face changed when he saw Marcus standing in the pen. His mouth opened. His eyes got narrow and cold. "What the hell are you doing?" Dale said. His voice was low and controlled, but there was something dangerous underneath the words. Something that made Marcus understand that he had just made a choice that could not be taken back. The man with the whip stepped forward. "Who is this?" he asked. "I thought you said nobody came to this part of the barn." And Marcus understood then. This was not something that Dale was doing alone. This was something bigger, something that involved other people, something that had been happening for a very long time while everyone at the ranch pretended not to see. Marcus stood very still. His heart was beating so hard that he could feel it in his neck. The man with the whip was looking at him like he was looking at a problem that needed to be solved. Dale was looking at him like he was looking at someone who had just made a terrible mistake. "I asked you a question," Dale said again. His voice was calm, but it was the kind of calm that made Marcus's skin feel cold. "What are you doing in this pen?" Marcus looked at Sunrise. She had moved even closer to the fence on the other side of the pen. She was as far away from the man with the whip as she could get. Her whole body was shaking. Her breath was coming in short, quick gasps. She knew what was about to happen. She had learned to know. This scene had probably happened many times before. "I came to look at her," Marcus said. His voice was quiet, but it was steady. "You left a note in my mailbox. $50 to fix the jinxed horse." Dale's face changed. Something flickered in his eyes. For just a moment, Marcus saw that Dale had not expected this. That Dale had maybe left that note hoping Marcus would ignore it. Or maybe hoping that Marcus would try and fail, just like everyone else had failed. "That horse cannot be fixed," the stranger said. He was still holding the whip. He was tapping it lightly against his leg, like he was impatient, like he wanted to get to work. "I have tried many horses like this one. They need discipline. They need to learn that there are consequences for bad behavior." "What bad behavior?" Marcus asked. The words came out before he could stop them. "What has she done?" Dale took a step forward. "She rears. She bucks. She is unpredictable." "Because you scared her," Marcus said. He could not keep quiet anymore. The words were pouring out now. "You have been scaring her. For years. You have been teaching her to be afraid." The stranger laughed. It was a cold sound, like the sound of ice breaking. "The horse is a tool," he said. "A tool can be shaped. A tool can be trained. This tool is valuable because of her bloodline. But her value means nothing if she cannot be controlled. So we control her." Marcus felt something break inside his chest. Not break like something dying, but break like a dam breaking. Like something that had been held back for too long was finally being released. He looked at Sunrise again. She was not looking at him anymore. She was looking at the whip. She was waiting. The way an animal waits when it knows what is coming and there is nothing it can do to stop it. "How long?" Marcus asked. "How long have you been doing this?" 7 years, Dale said. He was not trying to hide it anymore. Maybe because he thought Marcus was going to understand. Maybe because he thought Marcus would be so afraid of losing his job that he would keep quiet. "Since she came to the ranch. She came with a good pedigree, but a bad attitude. My job is to fix the attitude so we can sell her for a good price." 7 years. That meant it had started right after Sunrise arrived. That meant the sweet, bright-eyed 5-year-old horse that Marcus had seen come to the ranch 7 years ago had been broken down, day by day, mark by mark, into this terrified creature that could barely stand. "You are beating her," Marcus said. The words were small, simple, but they felt huge in the space between them. "We are training her," the stranger said. "The marks you see are proof that the training is working. She is learning." "Learning what?" Marcus asked. "Learning to be afraid of human beings? Learning that people hurt her? Learning that nothing she does will keep her safe." Dale's face got darker. "You need to leave this pen, Marcus. Right now. And you need to keep your mouth shut about what you have seen here. Because if you do not, I will make sure you never work with horses again. Not here. Not anywhere. I have friends in every ranch in this region. Your name will be poisoned." Marcus understood then that Dale was scared. Not scared of the law. Not scared of being caught, but scared that Marcus would talk. Scared that people would know what was happening. Scared that the story he had told everyone about the jinxed horse would fall apart. And that was when Marcus made a decision that changed everything. He reached into his jacket pocket, slowly, making sure Dale could see his hand the whole time. He pulled out his phone. His hands were still shaking, but his mind was clear now. He knew exactly what he had to do. "I'm going to call the sheriff," Marcus said. His voice was steady now, not shaky anymore. "And I'm going to show them what I have found in this pen." Dale moved forward fast. "Give me that phone." But Marcus was already turning on the camera. He was already pointing it at Sunrise's body, at the marks, at the scars, at the evidence of 7 years of pain written across her skin. The stranger raised the whip. For just a moment, Marcus thought he was going to use it on him instead of the horse. The man's face was red with anger. His jaw was clenched tight. "You are making a mistake," the stranger said. His voice was very quiet now, quieter than before, which made it more dangerous. You are interfering with private business. Private business, Marcus repeated. He kept the camera pointed steady. His hands had stopped shaking. You call this private business? Teaching a horse to fear pain? Breaking her teeth? Giving her scars? Creating the exact behavior you then blame her for? He turned the camera toward the stranger, toward the whip in his hand. What is your name? Marcus asked. What ranch are you from? What is your business here? The stranger did not answer, but he lowered the whip slightly. He was calculating something, trying to figure out his options, trying to figure out if the situation could still be fixed, still be controlled. Marcus kept filming. He filmed the barn. He filmed the pen. He filmed Sunrise's trembling body. He filmed the man with the whip. He filmed Dale's angry face. I'm calling the sheriff now, Marcus said, and I'm showing them this video, and I'm telling them everything I've seen and heard in this pen. He pulled the phone away from recording mode. His finger hovered over the phone icon, over the option to call 911. Dale took a step back. You cannot prove anything. But he was wrong. The marks were proof. The broken teeth were proof. The cataracts were proof. The whip in the stranger's hand was proof. The words they had spoken were proof. Marcus pressed the button. The phone rang. It rang once, twice. Then a voice on the other end answered. 911. What is your emergency? Marcus kept his eyes on Dale and the stranger. He kept his body between them and Sunrise. There is animal abuse happening at Westridge Ranch, he said. I need you to send someone right now. And I need you to send a veterinarian. There's a horse here that has been beaten for 7 years. She needs help. Behind him, Sunrise made a sound that was almost like a whisper, almost like hope. The sheriff arrived at Westridge Ranch 90 minutes later. There were 3 vehicles, 2 police cars, and 1 truck with a county animal welfare officer inside. The vehicles came through the main gate slowly, their lights off, but their presence impossible to ignore. By the time they pulled up near Barn C, word had spread through the ranch like wildfire. Everyone knew something bad had happened. Marcus was still standing in Sunrise's pen. He had not moved since he made the phone call. The stranger with the whip had left the barn quickly, disappearing toward the back roads like a person who had made a decision to run. Dale had stayed. He was standing near the fence, his arms crossed, his face a mask of rage and calculation. Sheriff Tom Bradley was a big man with gray hair and a serious face. He had been a sheriff of this county for 18 years. He had seen a lot of things. But when he walked into the barn and saw Sunrise, his expression changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes got cold. Behind him came Dr. Sarah Chun, the county veterinarian. She was smaller than the sheriff, but she moved with purpose. She carried a large bag of medical equipment. Her face was already serious before she even saw the horse. Show me, Sheriff Bradley said to Marcus. Marcus stepped out of the pen slowly, carefully, making sure not to spook Sunrise any more than she already was. He pointed to her body. He showed them the marks, the scars, the pattern of damage that covered her sides and back legs. Dr. Chin approached Sunrise slowly. She did not try to touch her right away. She just looked. She looked at the marks. She looked at the missing patches of hair. She looked at the horse's thin body and the way she was trembling. How long has she been like this? Dr. Chin asked. 7 years, Marcus said, since she came to the ranch. Dr. Chin closed her eyes for a moment, just for a moment, like she was trying to compose herself, like she had to prepare herself for what she was about to see. She opened her medical bag. She pulled on plastic gloves. She approached Sunrise's head carefully. The horse flinched, but Dr. Chun moved slowly and gently. She opened Sunrise's mouth to look at her teeth. The sound she made was very small, just a breath, but it carried everything, all the shock, all the sadness, all the anger at what had been done to this animal. The teeth are broken, Dr. Chun said to Sheriff Bradley. The gums are infected. This did not happen from accident. This happened from repeated damage, from a metal bit being forced into her mouth and held there. She looked at the marks on Sunrise's body again. These scars, some of them are old, some of them are newer. This has been happening continuously, not just once, but many times, over and over. Sheriff Bradley was writing things down in a notebook. His face was getting darker with anger. Dale Hutchins, he said. It was not a question. It was a statement. Yes, Marcus said. He admitted it. He said it was training. He said it was to make her worth more money when she was sold. Another officer came in. Officer Rodriguez. She was holding a camera and taking pictures of sunrise from different angles, documenting everything, every scar, every mark, every piece of evidence. Dale was still standing by the fence. He had not moved. He was watching everything like a man watching his whole life fall apart in front of him. Dale Hutchins, Sheriff Bradley said, "I need you to come with me." Dale's face changed. His calm mask cracked. For just a moment, Marcus saw real fear in his eyes. "I want a lawyer," Dale said immediately. "You can call one," Sheriff Bradley said. "But right now, I need you to come with me." As they led Dale away, he looked back at Marcus. His eyes were full of a kind of cold hatred. Like Marcus had betrayed him. Like Marcus had broken some kind of code between them. Like Marcus should have kept quiet the way everyone always did. But Marcus did not look away. Dr. Chun continued her examination. She checked Sunrise's legs. She looked at her hooves. She listened to her heart with a stethoscope. She checked her eyes carefully, looking at the cataracts that were forming. "The cataracts are stress-related," Dr. Chun told Sheriff Bradley. "This horse has been living in a constant state of fear. Fear causes physical changes in the body. The body responds to danger by shutting down, by conserving energy, by preparing for pain." She looked at Sunrise's body condition score, the way the ribs showed, the way the hip bones were sharp and visible. "She has been starved periodically," Dr. Chin said. "Not all the time, but in cycles. Feed withheld, then given back. This is another form of control, another way to break an animal's spirit." Marcus felt something burn in his chest. Not anger exactly, but a kind of burning that came from understanding just how deliberate this all was. How calculated. How many choices have been made to hurt this horse? Is she going to be okay? Marcus asked. Dr. Chin looked at Sunrise for a long time. She was quiet. She was thinking. Finally, she said, "Physically, she can heal. The wounds can close. The infections can be treated. But psychologically," she paused. "That takes longer. Much longer. She has learned that humans hurt her. She has learned that she cannot escape. She has learned that no matter what she does, pain will find her. Unlearning that is not easy." The animal welfare officer, a woman named Jennifer Torres, was examining the barn more carefully now. She was looking at the equipment. She was taking pictures of the whip that the stranger had dropped on the ground. She was documenting everything that could be evidence. "There are text messages," Jennifer said, looking at her phone. She had clearly been reading something that the police had already obtained. "Between Dale Hutchins and someone named Victor Morales. Victor is a horse trader. They have been discussing this horse specifically, talking about improving her value through behavioral correction." She looked at Sheriff Bradley. "Victor Morales is the man who was here with the whip. He is already gone. We have officers looking for him, but he has probably crossed the state line by now." Sheriff Bradley nodded. "Get his information out to other jurisdictions. He is not going to disappear that easily." Over the next 2 hours, more people came. A veterinary tech came to help with Sunrise. They gave her medication for pain and infection. They cleaned her wounds carefully. They checked her for internal injuries. Sunrise stood very still through all of it, like she had learned long ago that resistance was pointless. By the late afternoon, the news had spread beyond the ranch. Word was getting out. A local reporter had heard the story on the police scanner and was already driving toward Westridge Ranch with a camera crew. By tomorrow morning, this would be more than just a local story. This would be news. Marcus stood outside the barn as the sun began to set. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking apart, and light was coming through. Officer Rodriguez approached him. "Thank you," she said. "What you did today, what you witnessed, it matters. That horse would have kept suffering if you had not acted." Marcus did not feel like a hero. He felt tired. He felt sad. He felt angry at himself for not acting sooner. For the 7 years he had known something was wrong, but had stayed quiet. "What happens to her now?" he asked. "She will go to a veterinary clinic for now," Officer Rodriguez said, "for treatment and observation. Then, if all goes well, she will go to an equine rehabilitation facility, a place where horses that have experienced trauma can heal." Inside the barn, Dr. Chun was still with Sunrise. She had her hand on the horse's neck. Sunrise was not flinching anymore. She was standing very still. And in that stillness, Marcus thought he saw something shift. Some tiny, small beginning of trust. Some small sign that maybe, just maybe, this horse could learn that not all humans were dangerous. Word count, 1,000 words. Note, Part 4 is the turning point where justice becomes real and visible. The authorities arrive, and the evidence is documented. We learn the full scope of the abuse through Dr. Chen's examination. The broken teeth, the cataracts, the starving cycles, all of it deliberate and calculated. Dale is arrested, and we learn that Victor Morales, the stranger, is a horse trader who runs a network of abuse. The story shifts from what happened to justice is coming and healing can begin. The moment with Dr. Chen's hand on Sunrise's neck creates hope for the audience. This builds the emotional bridge to Part 5, where we will see Sunrise's actual recovery and transformation 0.8 months after Sheriff Bradley drove away from Westridge Ranch with Dale Hutchins in the back of his vehicle. Sunrise stood in a large pasture at Crescent Ridge Equine Rehabilitation Center. The transformation was so complete that a person who had not known her before would never believe she was the same horse. Her coat was now rich and glossy, the kind of coat that caught the sunlight and shone like polished mahogany. Her ribs were no longer visible. Her body had filled out, not with fat, but with healthy muscle. Her mane was long and clean and thick. It moved when she moved like water flowing. Her eyes were bright and clear. The cataracts that had been forming were still there, but they no longer seemed to matter. Because now she was looking at good things. Now she was looking at light and grass and other horses and humans who were gentle. The woman who had saved her name was Elena Moreno. She had been working at Crescent Ridge for 20 years. She had dedicated her life to horses that had been broken by humans and had learned to trust again. When Sunrise arrived at the facility 8 months ago, Elena had looked into the horse's eyes and made a promise. "I see you in there," Elena had whispered, her hand on Sunrise's neck. "And I'm going to help you remember that you are worth saving." The first week had been the hardest. Sunrise had flinched if anyone approached from behind. She would panic if she heard certain sounds. The sound of metal, the sound of boots running, the sound of a whip cutting through the air. All of these things would send her back to the barn at Westridge Ranch, back to the fear, back to the pain. But Elena did not give up. She moved slowly. She spoke in soft voices. She never made sudden movements. She never forced Sunrise to do anything. She just spent time with her. Every single day, Elena would come to Sunrise's stall and sit with her. Not doing anything, just being there, just existing in the same space and showing Sunrise that sometimes humans were just present and kind and not trying to hurt her. The second week, Sunrise began to eat normally for the first time in years. Her body had learned to hoard food, to eat compulsively whenever grain was offered, because she had learned that food could be taken away at any moment. Elena fed her small amounts multiple times a day, showing her that the food would always come, that there would always be enough, that she did not need to panic. The third week, Sunrise stopped the self-destructive behaviors that trauma had created. She had been weaving back and forth in her stall, a nervous habit that meant her mind was trapped in a loop of fear. She had been over-grooming herself, biting at her own skin until it bled. But as she began to feel safe, her body began to relax. The constant state of terror started to ease. By the fourth week, something shifted inside her. Elena noticed it one afternoon when she was grooming Sunrise's mane. The horse was not flinching. The horse was leaning into the brush. The horse was making a small sound, almost a sigh, that sounded like contentment. Elena had cried that day. Not sad tears, happy tears. The kind of tears that come when you witness something impossible become possible. 6 months into Sunrise's recovery, Elena began introducing her to other horses. This was the part that Elena was most nervous about. Some horses that had been abused became aggressive themselves. They learned to bite and kick and defend themselves at any cost. They hurt other animals because they had been hurt so badly. But Sunrise was different. When Elena brought her into the pasture with 3 other rescued horses, Sunrise was gentle. She was so gentle that it broke Elena's heart even more. This was not a horse that had learned cruelty. This was a horse that had learned only to survive. She would lower her head when younger horses approached her. She would stand very still and let them investigate her. She never used her size or strength as a weapon. Instead, she became a comfort horse. She became a horse that other scared horses would stand next to. A horse whose presence meant safety. A horse that had been taught nothing but pain and had somehow learned instead to be a teacher of gentleness. 1 year after Sunrise arrived at Crescent Ridge, Elena's rehabilitation program had begun to change. She was working with people now, not just horses. Veterans with PTSD came to the facility. Children who had experienced abuse came to learn to trust again. Adults who had been hurt by other humans came to understand what it meant to help an animal heal. And they all learned from Sunrise. There was a veteran named James who could not sleep for more than 2 hours at a time. He had nightmares about combat. He had panic attacks when he heard loud noises. He came to Crescent Ridge because his therapist thought it might help to spend time with animals. On his first day, James was assigned to Sunrise. He was supposed to groom her, to spend time with her, to connect with her. James stood in front of Sunrise for 5 minutes without moving. He was afraid. Afraid of horses. Afraid of failing. Afraid of being broken. Sunrise walked toward him. Slowly. She dropped her head slightly. She stood very still. And James began to cry. Because he understood, in that moment, that there was another living being in this world who understood what it felt like to be afraid. Who understood what it felt like to survive something terrible. Who understood what it felt like to not know if you could ever trust again. He began to groom her. Slowly. Carefully. And as his hands moved through her mane, something in his chest began to loosen. Something began to heal. By the end of 6 months, James had become one of Sunrise's primary caretakers. He came to Crescent Ridge 5 days a week. He groomed her. He walked with her. He sat with her in the pasture and just breathed the same air as her. And his nightmares became less frequent. His panic attacks became easier to manage. He learned to trust again because he was learning to trust Sunrise. There was a child named Maria who had been taken away from her abusive parents. She did not speak. She had not spoken in 8 months. The doctors said she had selective mutism, that her mind had decided it was safer not to use her voice. Maria came to Crescent Ridge and was introduced to Sunrise. The social worker who brought her thought maybe a horse could help her understand that not all relationships are built on pain. For 3 weeks, Maria just sat in the pasture near Sunrise. She did not touch her. She did not speak. She just sat, and Sunrise stood nearby, not forcing anything, just being present. On the 22nd day, Maria reached out her hand. Sunrise walked to her. The horse lowered her head and breathed on Maria's palm. Warm breath, living breath, the breath of a creature that was also afraid and also healing. Maria opened her mouth. The sound that came out was very small. It was just one word, but it was a word. The first word she had spoken in 8 months. "Hi," she whispered. Sunrise nickered in response. A soft, gentle sound. And Maria began to cry. And Elena began to cry. And even the social worker began to cry. Because they all understood that they were witnessing something sacred. They were witnessing the moment when one broken soul helped another broken soul understand that healing was possible. 2 years after Sunrise arrived at Crescent Ridge, Marcus Webb stood in the pasture with her. He was holding her halter. He was not riding her. Sunrise never ran again in the way she had been born to run. But she ran in other ways now. She ran when she was happy. She ran when the grass was green and the sun was warm and life felt good. Marcus had left his job at Westridge Ranch 6 months after the investigation concluded. He could not work at a place that had allowed that abuse to happen. He could not look at the other workers who had known or suspected and said nothing. He could not stay. Instead, he had come to Crescent Ridge as a volunteer. He had learned Elena's techniques. He had learned what it meant to help an animal unlearn fear. He had learned that sometimes the most important thing you could do was just be patient and kind and consistent. He had learned these things from Sunrise. On this day, Marcus was bringing his grandson to visit the horse. The boy was 7 years old. His name was Thomas, and he was learning the story. The story of the horse that everyone called Jinxed. The story of his grandfather being brave enough to see abuse and speak against it. The story of a horse that could have died broken, but instead lived to help others heal. Thomas stood next to Sunrise and ran his hand down her shoulder. Her coat was warm in the afternoon sun. This horse was sad once, Thomas said. He was repeating what his grandfather had told him. But people helped her, and now she is happy. Marcus put his hand on his grandson's shoulder. He looked at Sunrise. She was looking back at him, and in her eye, he saw something he had never seen in Westridge Ranch. He saw peace. He saw forgiveness. He saw a life that had become more than survival. Sunrise had never made the money that Dale Hutchins and Victor Morales had wanted her to make. She had never been sold to a wealthy owner. She had never competed in shows or races. By the standards that those men had measured her worth, she was worthless. But by every other measure of worth that mattered, she was priceless. She was a teacher. She was a healer. She was proof that even when humans broke something, even when the breaking seemed complete and permanent, healing could still happen. She was proof that the labels we put on things, broken, crazy, jinxed, worthless, were often just the evidence of what we had done to them, not the truth of what they were. The horse that everyone said could not be fixed had not been fixed at all. She had been set free. She had been allowed to be herself again. She had been given time and patience and gentleness and the space to remember what it felt like to be a living creature that mattered. And in learning to live again, she had taught hundreds of other broken souls how to do the same.